The Big E Sports Show.
Yeah, we got it going on,
The fastest hour in sports entertainment. We don't just talk about the headlines. We bring you some of the most engaging and colorful guests each and every episode for your listening pleasure. Now, without further ado, here's your host, Elissa Walker Campbell.
Elissa Walker Campbell, so glad you're with us as we continue to celebrate March Madness and bring you the latest highlights. We have lined up an amazing guest. Delighted to have joining us for the very first time, renowned college basketball coach with a career spanning over 4 decades. He revitalized multiple basketball programs and left a lasting impact on the game. We're thrilled to welcome in basketball coaching legend, and that is the great Tom Penders. Hi, Coach. How are you?
I'm doing great. You?
Outstanding. This is truly one of my favorite times of the year. And it seems like every year I'm frantically, trying to fill out my bracket, hoping I can predict who will take home the title. Just how does your bracket look after that first round?
It's hanging in pretty well. My wife, Susie, usually beats me.
I'm
not that great, but I can pick games here or there, cherry pick. We're usually out in Las Vegas this time of year. Since I retired, a former assistant of mine is a big guy for MGM Grand. Chris Howell is his name, and we go out there and the first weekend every year. We're taking a year off this year, and we're enjoying where we are in Miami Beach. But we watch every game. I like to look at the coaching matchups as well as the playing matchups, and I handicap. It's like going to a racetrack and knowing who the jockeys are. And it's fun to see some of these new guys come and knock off the older guys and vice versa. You see a real legend in Kelvin Sampson, who, when he was at Oklahoma, I was at the University of Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And I can say this without exaggeration. He was the only coach that I competed against where I couldn't get my kids to play as hard as he got his kids to play. Maybe once or twice we measured up and we were even. He's the greatest, and we got to be great friends while we were rivals, and I'm a big Houston Cougar fan.
Well, we marvel at Kelvin Sampson and what he's been able to accomplish right here in Houston, but weigh in on Tom Izzo at Michigan and just what he's done. 27 straight tournament appearances. That is unprecedented.
Yeah, and he's pretty much automatic in the first round, too. It's rare that he goes down with a first-round upset. If it's happened, I don't remember it. He's a very good tournament coach. This year's team, I think he's letting them run more, and they're more explosive, more guard-oriented, and they can hit the three. So, they're one of those dark horses, even though they are highly seeded. He's an amazing coach. He's had a great run at Michigan State. It's so hard to stay at a school as many years as Tom has. And I remember being with him on kind of a vacation that they used to have. The shoe companies would sponsor with husbands and wives and et cetera. And Tom was going into his first or second year at Michigan State. And we were out somewhere where the beautiful ocean. It was in Hawaii, actually. Yeah. And we talked for a couple hours just about, starting up a program and having to compete against what was then a dominant program over at the University of Michigan. And, I think I helped him, but, I watch his teams play year in, year out. They're consistent. They're tough. They're physical. And, maybe there'll be a Tom Izzo, Kelvin Sampson deal later on in this tournament. That would be a great matchup.
Absolutely. Talking and speaking of so many of the great coaches, Kelvin Sampson, Tom Izzo, John Calipari, You were a head coach for over 4 decades, as I mentioned in the open. So let's talk about the role coaches play in navigating tournament challenges. I mean, you are a veteran coach and you were able to bring those strategic advantages. How did you do it?
Well, the first one was at the University of Rhode Island. I was known and hired because I turned programs around. But usually the same athletic director who was the head man over a lousy program, he remained when I left at most of those places. So, it's always nice to see a former team of yours do well. And you have to prepare your team in March a little bit differently because of here's something I don't think the fans really get a handle on. The timeouts are over 5 minutes now. And, it's a time where you can rest your players. You can talk things over with your assistant coach. You can call your hotel and have them deliver something to your room.
Yeah.
It's an eternity.
Yeah.
So that you break it down into 4-minute games. So I go to this NCAA tournament in Chapel Hill at the brand new Dean Dome with my Rhode Island team. That's an 11 seed. And we open up with a very good runner-up Big 8, which is, Oklahoma. They combined to join and become the Big 12 with Texas schools and et cetera in the late 90s. But nobody heard of us. And we had a great guard tandem in the backcourt. And that made me feel secure and confident that we'd have a good showing. But we had no idea how good Missouri was until we actually got to play. But I told my kids, look, you've been crying for the 2 years that I've been here about we don't get any respect because of the Big East. Temple was number 1 in the country at that time for 2 years straight, basically, for the entire season. So we played Temple every year about 3 times, between the playoffs and regular season. So we went in, and I thought that would be the best way to approach it. Challenge them, but also, you've been crying for recognition. Here's your opportunity. And then we win 88-80. Now we have to face Syracuse, who I think had 3 losses. They were in the finals the year before where they lost to Indiana. It was in New Orleans, I believe. But now Syracuse is the bigger challenge, but my players were dying to play a Big East team. The only Big East team that would play the University of Rhode Island was Providence, who had been in the Final Four the year before with Rick Pitino at the helm. But they were still good. They had a lot of players back from that team. So we're trying to play the Big East schools, but they don't want to play us to help us in the power rankings. And that's basically the motivation we used. It was us against the world. There's no pressure on us. And when you go into another arena, like the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the fans go for the underdog.
Yeah.
So if you can play well, in the first 10 minutes of the game, the fans that are there for your game, whether there was a game before or a game immediately following, you get that entire crowd behind you. And, we beat Syracuse. We led from start to finish. We scored 99 points and sent Syracuse packing. And then we had a whole week to think about it. We had to go back to campus. And that was the toughest part of the tournament for us because you go back to campus and everybody's telling you how wonderful you are and the kids start getting overconfident and you're worried that they're not going to be psyched or in the right mood. So now I have to start all over. We're playing Mike Krzyzewski's Duke team. It was led by a guy named Danny Ferry.
Oh, yeah.
And that was in the Meadowlands, which is Mike Krzyzewski's second home court. They played about 3 times a year there. against, independent or cross-nation foes. So there's a lot of Duke fans in New Jersey. So we're kind of the visitors in that. And we lost. They slowed us down. We lost 73-72 on a very controversial play, which I won't go over. But this can happen to teams as well. Sometimes coaches blow it and don't have a timeout left when they need it. Sometimes a player misses 2 free throws at the end of a ball game or an overtime, and you lose. Or the referees kick about a half a dozen calls that go the other way because they want to work in this other coach's conference. So we lost a real tough game, and that was hard to take. I don't care if you get to the NCAA finals. It hurts when you lose in the tournament. It hurts just the same as an opening round loss, believe me. And I think there's a story in the New York Post earlier this week about St. John's and Rick Pitino, and you can't always count on a high seed. St. John's has had a number of teams over the years that would get highly seeded but never make the Final Four or get sent home early. And he talked about that. He's a veteran coach who's been there. He knows how to get teams ready, too. But I like the approach, if you can build it up in your team, that it's us against the world and we have something to prove, and the pressure's on the other team, not on us.
Well, Coach, let's talk about pressure. I mean, what advice would you offer to aspiring coaches navigating today's college basketball tournament?
Same thing that I did as a young coach. I called and contacted a lot of veteran coaches who had been there before. Red Auerbach, who ran the Boston Celtics. When I first started in college, I was up at Tufts University, which was about 10 minutes from the Boston Garden. And I used to go to Celtic practices and got to know him and Tommy Heinsohn, their coach, and their great teams that they had there in the early 70s. So, Red Auerbach was a mentor of mine, and Al McGuire. And there are a lot of guys like that. Sometimes an NBA coach who might be running hot, his team is getting deep into the playoffs. You send him a text or an email to his office and ask if you can see some practices. And I did that throughout my career. Get new ideas, stay on the cutting edge, and never figure that you have all the answers to everything. You will learn something every year. I'm still learning things. I help out a couple of young coaches who are very, very successful and have had deep runs. I'm talking NCAA championships and runner-ups, and we're still in contact. Any advice for this game, Coach? Or maybe I'll text them and say, I saw something in this team you're going to play in the next round. And it might be a simple thing, but they always appreciate it and stay in touch with me. And it's kind of cool. A lot of young coaches today, they don't think they need that. Now that they're getting all this money, $5 to $10 million a year, they think everything is a top secret. Now I see teams running 3-man weaves out there. That stuff started in the early 1950s.
Yeah.
When I didn't even know what a basketball court looked like. So you learn something. The tricks of the trade, that you never end it. It never ends for you.
Well, Tom, I'd love for you to provide a broader perspective and just weigh in. Give us your thoughts on the NIL, the transfer portal, because the landscape of college basketball has certainly evolved. It's changed a lot since you were coaching. Just how do you see these changes affecting team dynamics and the overall competitiveness of the sport?
Well, I'm glad the athletes are able to get this NIL thing. I don't know how they can justify the type of payrolls they have. Some schools, I know the athletic directors at some of the schools, some of the bigger schools. I coached at the University of Texas, and they pay their groundskeeper for the baseball field more than most head basketball coaches in the country. They want to be the biggest and best at everything. But money isn't always the answer. Just ask the coach that lost to Drake yesterday. How good is the Missouri Valley Conference? Nobody picked them. But Drake has 30 wins going into that game. That coach won 3 or 4 national championships at the Division II school. I think it was Northeast Oklahoma. That guy's no dummy, and he brought 4 of his players with him from a Division II program to play for him at Drake, and they were on the floor in that game. They were like a well-oiled machine. So recruiting is now changing. Instead of going after high school players, coaches in just about every sport are mining Division IIs and IIIs for talent.
Yep.
They figure, let's get an older player with more experience, more maturity, coachable. Let's do that, and let's put a team together that way. Where you have UConn, they lose 4 and 5 players a year, and they won 2 in a row, which was, that's a coaching miracle by Danny Hurley. Now this year, they got stung a little bit, and a sprained ankle to a key player sent them into an 8 seed in this tournament, but never bet against UConn. Basketball is as big in Connecticut as football is in Texas.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that. It's kind of like pockets in Indiana, great basketball state. Well, it's the same in Connecticut. They play football on Friday nights there too, but it's only because, the basketball team or the season doesn't start until December in Connecticut, but it goes into March, and they play not as many games as some schools around the country, but it's the sport. And as soon as basketball practice starts, they start playing football games on Saturday morning so the basketball team can practice as late as they want to on Friday or after the football game on Saturday. It's a lot different in the football-oriented states around the country. But I'm worried about the sport. This thing that happened where the commissioner of the committee, the basketball committee,
right,
he's getting a $105,000 kickback. If his contract, if the basketball team does well, he gets $105,000 just to get into the tournament. And his team gets the last team picked for the field. I'm not saying that North Carolina doesn't have the talent to win a few games in this tournament. There have been other play-in teams that have made it to the Final Four. I think of Butler. I think of VCU under Shaka Smart. Nobody heard of him or VCU until they did that. But it can and will happen again. That's great for the sport. But when you're talking about committee members that are made up mainly of athletic directors and they have a vested interest in their schools getting in, that's not good. Transparency is needed. And also with this NIL deal, Las Vegas puts a line on every game, and it comes in every newspaper in the country. Well, it's amazingly accurate in some cases. It's got to be a temptation here to get to somebody who doesn't have an NIL deal, where they're playing on a team where the NIL guy is driving a Maserati and he's riding a bicycle.
Exactly.
It's bound to happen. and scandal is just around the corner. They've got to come up with salary caps and transparency for the public. You can't tell me that betting isn't important. All the viewers that watch college basketball, it's not just fans of schools. It's people that want to put a wager down and they get vested into the games that are being played. You've got officials to be concerned about. You've got that happened in the NBA. Don't think it can't happen in college. And transparency with the committee. It shouldn't be made up of athletic directors. What the heck do athletic directors know about picking teams? So they throw everything into a computer, and you end up, with criticism at the end. And the TV networks who are televising these games, they asked them softball questions. They had, a committee member and the head of the committee on television for 5 minutes. They used to get grilled by Billy Packer of CBS. They used to get grilled over maybe one selection that Billy Packer and CBS disagreed with. Now you can't criticize them, and the announcers on television cannot criticize officials. So you're not getting, it's even Charles Barkley is not allowed to do it. But he did call out the fact that Kenny Smith's team this yesterday, my wife and I saw it. He did call them out for having, the commissioner with a vested interest put his team, his school, into the field of 68. So, no, we need transparency now. It can't happen soon enough, or we're headed for another major scandal, which could kill the sport of college basketball. It's good to see the women grow. They're doing everything right. But they're subject to the same things. And there are schools now giving out NIL money. Some schools are doing it the right way, where it's spread out among the team. But let's be transparent about it. I root for the schools that don't have NIL money. And I can tell by the warm-ups they come out in and the uniforms they're wearing compared to the Nike Jump label. Those are the high-end programs where the coaches and the schools are bringing in millions or getting millions to wear their shoes and apparel wherever they go, and to games and during games and for post-game interviews. So they're playing against Drake, and nobody's getting NIL money there. And then McNeese State, they win yesterday. The only NIL deal that's going on in that program is by their entrepreneurial manager, who's already made over $50,000 by selling different things that are related to the program and going out to car dealerships and knocking on doors and raising money that way. Which I tip my hat off, and I also congratulate the coaches of those programs who can pull the magic in March.
Right. Hey, Tom, we are up against the clock. We're going to continue this conversation and extend another invitation and have you back. But as we close out, what do you hope your legacy is within the college basketball community? Just give us your thoughts on legacy and just the impact you had. You were with a number of programs and did an amazing job revitalizing them.
Well, very simply put, because my wife has asked me what I want on my tombstone, and I would just say he cared about his players. Because a day doesn't go by where I don't get a call from one of them, and particularly this time of year. I must have had a dozen messages yesterday just on the games that were on. When Texas went down in the first round, the playing round, I had about 15 to 20 guys texting me before, during, and after the game. So I've gotten a heck of a lot more out of being a basketball coach than any of my players, but I really did care about every one of them, and I still do.
Tom Penders, legendary men's basketball coach, 649 career wins across 5 Division I schools. Of course, spent time at Texas and right here in Houston. What an honor to have you on our program. March Madness continues, and we're going to extend this conversation and have you back again real soon. Thank you so much, Coach Penders.
Thank you, Elissa.
You bet. Stick around. Much more coming your way.